I have to admit, if it wasn't for the movie, I probably wouldn't have picked up Crazy Rich Asians. Here in Canada, Crazy Rich Asians is totally a thing. In Vancouver, Toronto, and Montreal, real estate prices are skyrocketing as a result of Chinese buyers. In 2017 alone, Chinese investors inquired about $1.5 billion worth of Canadian properties. In Vancouver, they're answering this with a 20% foreign buyers tax on top of list price, as well as speculator taxes for those people who don't pay taxes in British Columbia or whose primary breadwinner lives abroad. And despite all of those measures, real estate is still getting picked up at an exponential rate, driving real estate prices up. And that's just real estate. In education, Chinese students account for 28% of all international students in Canada in 2017. And here in town, I think that number is even higher with our local university's international reputation with computer science and maths. And it's immediately noticeable. When our daughter was looking at universities, there was universities in Northern Ontario willing to pay for the entire family's accommodations if they would just come down and visit the campus. Other schools offered up free tuition for students coming in with an average of 90% or higher. Here in town, it just felt like they threw you a brochure and wished you the best of luck. They're clearly keeping their eye on the prize, i.e. foreign, Chinese, exchange students who are paying 4 to 5 times the annual tuition fees, and they can well afford it. With back to school just around the corner, the city is going to be overrun with an influx of Chinese students driving their M-Class BMWs, their S-Class Mercedes, and a few misguided folk that have never experienced the Canadian winter buying Lamborghinis with cash. And just the worst, studious, well-behaved, keeping to themselves, drinking bubble tea, and rich. Frankly, I wasn't sure if I wanted to read about these crazy rich Asians. But it turns out it's like refusing to read Harry Potter because Chris Angel is a douche and David Blaine gives you the heebies. I mean, there's magicians, and then there's wizards. Crazy Rich Asians are a world unto themselves. They're the top 1% of the 1%, a world where their fish get plastic surgery and their wardrobes have temperature-controlled zones, 55 for cashmere and a more balmy 70 degrees for their leather. And just like Harry Potter, it is so readable. JK, I've always thought, has this innate ability to write self-contained chapters, each with its own narrative story arc, building to a climax while pushing the story forward. Kevin Kwan does much the same thing, giving out the narrative duties to different characters, each introducing a little bit of crisis while moving that story forward, making it so readable. Okay, I'm back. Lighting has changed a little bit, and I had to make a bit of a detour, but I'm back. So there's a lot of story arcs going on here, and it's really tough to get a hold on at first. You have Rachel Chu, economist and professor, dating Nicholas Young, fellow professor, who wants to return back to Singapore so he could be the best man at his best friend Colin Koo's wedding to Aramantha Lee. While they're there, Rachel is looking forward to meeting with her college friend Peklin Go and the Go family. But you also have Nicholas's cousin Astrid and her husband Michael, not to mention Nicholas's mother Eleanor, plus the gaggle of uber-wealthy Bible study group friends that she has, and her mother-in-law Sue Yi. So it's really a lot. And then it hits me. Crazy Rich Asians is a romance novel. And I really like this particular romance novel. And granted, it doesn't have the sexy times indicative of the genre, but totally romance novel. Now, Kevin Kwan, no dummy. He's actually worked as a visual and creative consultant for brands like TED and MoMA, and he knows that labeling this a romance leaves it in the literary ghetto. Don't at me. But we all know that romance is the country music of books. I mean, I don't think I like country music, what with its obsession with NASCAR, America, guns, and racism. But I do love me some Casey Musgraves. Jason Isbell's latest album is fantastic, and I will listen to anything that Lyle Lovett puts out. So I guess I don't hate all country, hashtag not all country. And the same goes for romance. I haven't read anything that I've liked in the genre, but it doesn't mean I wouldn't like the genre with the right book. And maybe Crazy Rich Asians is that book. But you don't top the New York Times bestseller list and get a movie deal out of it by being shelved in romance. At least not yet. And Asian romance? Weeaboo's obsessing over the frail Asian flower, and tentacle porn does not count. But an English language all Asian cast romance? I mean, take that behind the library and shoot it. It's done. Christian Rudder in his book Dataclysm, compiling information from his website OkCupid, found the least dateable demographic for women was Asian men. Nicholas Young had to be richer than God to be even semi-appealing. Otherwise, this dies completely on the romance shelf. And then I'm feeling even more nervous when I hear that it's being made into a movie. I mean, are North American audiences ready for an all-Asian rom-com? And I know K-dramas have their fan base, but is it ready for the mainstream yet? Or maybe they'll draw from Asian central casting, and we'll have Rachel Chu played by Scarlett Johansson wooing our boyfriend Matt Damon with only her best friend Emma Stone to stand at her corner against the imperious mother-in-law played by Tilda Swinton. Thankfully, it is an all-Asian cast, and the movie is shot on a paltry $30 million budget. Aramantha and Colin's wedding in the book cost $40 million to make, and The Great Gatsby had $190 million in order to shoot their opulent movie. The movie is great, by the way. It's a nice, light, frothy rom-com. I enjoyed it immensely, and a lot has been made about the fact that this is the first all-Asian cast that we've seen in a Hollywood movie since the Joy Luck Club, but let's not be quick to call this an Asian Black Panther. What we need is more narrative plentitude, something that author Viet Thanh Nguyen talks about. It's something the majority enjoys. It allows for the possibility of excellence, but mediocrity is perfectly acceptable. Another grown-ups movie could be a bad movie, and it's not a big deal. Mediocrity is fine. It doesn't ruin the career of Adam Sandler, and it doesn't represent a failure of all white male movies. Crazy Rich Asians, however, doesn't get that benefit. It isn't part of a narrative plentitude model. So if it fails, it represents a failure of Asian movies, and it means that these Asian-led movies aren't marketable. And thankfully, it's a great movie, but I want to get to that place of narrative plentitude where movies can just be mediocre, and it doesn't represent a damning of the entire model. Margaret Cho's All-American Girl failed, which meant it was 20 years before we saw Fresh Off the Boat. For many, this is a watershed moment in Asian representation on screen. It's much like how I remember feeling when I first saw Better Luck Tomorrow, or discovering Hong Kong's Chow Yun-fat during the height of his cinematic career with Hard-Boiled, The Killer, and The God of Gamblers. But for me, the pinnacle of Asian representation in Hollywood is still Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle. And whether it's all that sort of pre-marketing love-in hype about the set, it's got to be a really great experience being an Asian amongst other Asians, as opposed to being the lone Asian on a set, which is far more common. Ken Jeong on the set of Crazy Rich Asians is going to have a markedly different experience there than perhaps he did on The Hangover. Same goes for Awkwafina on Crazy Rich Asians versus her experience on Ocean's 8. But back to the book. I've heard some people complain about the excessive name-dropping of brands in the book, but that seems a little wrong. I mean, no one complains about the excessive use of magic words in Harry Potter. I mean, you kind of know what you're signing up for when you pick up Crazy Rich Asians. Anyway, I'm going to damn it with that faint praise and say that it was a light, fun summer beach read, whatever that means. It is fun, the way that romance novels, I guess, should be fun. I really enjoyed it. The writing is simple, straightforward, meeting out the information without drawing undue attention to itself, and for a big book, it just flew by. I've already picked up the sequel, China Rich Girlfriend, no doubt in part to the fact that John Chu has already been tapped to direct the sequel of the movie, and frankly, if Chow Yun-fat doesn't play Philip Young, the husband of Michelle Yeoh's character Eleanor, in the sequel, I just don't know what. So, Crazy Rich Asians, really enjoyed the book. Go out, see the movie. Also, a lot of fun, and we could use a lot more fun in our lives. So check them both out if you get the chance. We also had our second Discord book club voice chat. Doubled in size. It was huge. And not even church or birthday celebrations or time zones that saw people up at 6 in the morning kept them from joining in. We were talking for about 4 hours about poutine, stroopwafel, and Lagengebak, whatever those things are. Anyway, we'd love to have you at our next one. For September, we're reading Madeline Miller's Circe. So jump on board and get on the voice chat at the end of the month. Love to see you there. In the meantime, have a great week of reading, and we will talk to you soon. Bye.